even the police officer, the second time she speeded, looked at her record and said, you could kill someone.
Why can't you just let me live my life, man?
I want to let you live your life, but you need to have some boundaries in because I'm afraid you're going to get hurt.
That's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to another episode of
Yeah.
Teen Talks, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about balancing responsibility and freedom. Giving your
Yes.
teen the freedom that they need to grow and to evolve and to learn and to step into their future self, but at the same time, setting up those boundaries, making sure that they're doing things responsibly. So we're going to be talking about all that today.
Yeah. And so your teen might react the same way that Rehan just reacted, but let's try to turn it so that maybe you don't get that reaction. Right?
Yeah. And I want to, there's something that I actually watched today. It was a perspective that was shared by Jay Shetty. I really enjoyed. In fact, I have like his book is like literally chilling right there.
Oh yeah. I love him.
He's a really good influencer in the personal development space, and he was answering a question on a podcast, and he shared his perspective when it came to the decisions that we make. We put so much importance on the decisions that we make, right? We always try and make the right decision every step of the way. And what
Some
he
of
was
us struggle
saying,
to even make a decision, right?
exactly. And what he was saying was we shouldn't actually put so much importance on the decisions that we make, but rather we should put importance when it comes to the direction that we're going in, right? Because I can make a decision right now when it comes to my life, and I have no idea if it's a right decision or a wrong decision. I will only know later on in the future, right?
Right.
However, if I know the direction that I'm going in, then no matter what decision I'm making, I know that I'm making that decision and it is serving that direction. It is serving that growth. So it's really interesting when you like frame things that way, because it just opens up a new realm of possibilities, especially I feel when it comes to helping your teens with their growth and their development. Right, Susan?
Yeah, I agree. It's a much better way because honestly, as parents, we're not able to be with them 24 hours a day. They're going to be making decisions on their own all the time. And if they know where they're going and they know their direction, which a lot of teens don't, but we can help them with that, they have a better chance of making a better decision if they know what it is they're going towards.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So how do we set that up? How do we get them to know what way they're going? Right?
Yeah. And that's the big question, right?
Mhm.
Because ultimately we want to help guide them, right? There's this big back and forth, right? And we've talked about this before on other episodes of, parents thinking and assuming that they know what's best, which means that they'd make the decisions for their teen, right? But if we do take the approach that we mentioned earlier about like bringing the importance when it comes to the direction rather than the decision, then ultimately what you want to do is you just want to help guide your teen. You let them make their decisions, but you kind of show them the direction that you feel is best for them to go, rather than telling them you should do this, you should do this. You show them a direction. You guide them towards that direction. And a good analogy here, and Susan, we've talked about this before as well, is the bowling analogy, right? Where you
Not
have
bullying,
those
bowling.
bowling,
Like bowling.
bowling, the sport. It's a sport, right? I'm pretty sure it's a sport.
Yep.
Where you have those barriers. I don't know what you call them. Susan, what do you call them?
Bumpers.
The
When
bumpers.
you take the little kids down. I never had bumpers, but now when we would take our kids and you go and you have options to either have the ball have the ability to go into the gutter, or you can put up the bumpers so that they will not go in the gutter. That ball won't go in the gutter no matter what they do, unless they like throw it and it skips over. But it's guaranteed to make it down into the end and hit something.
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. And that's the whole idea here, right? Is to help
Mhm.
guide that ball. Your teenager ultimately is the one who's going to be throwing the ball. They're gonna be the ones deciding how to throw the ball. What you're doing in this situation is you're just being the bumper. You are guiding that ball so that you're helping them succeed or get to where they need to be in life,
Mhm. And stay
right?
out of the gutter.
Stay out of the gutter.
Stay out of the
Exactly.
gutter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you do that, right? How do you do
Mm-hmm.
that? You do that by having open communication for one,
Yeah.
uh, helping your team develop values. You know, what's important to them? Talking about what's important to you, what's important to the family, what's important in their life, what's their direction that they want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and then talk about what does that look like? Okay, well, what does that look like? If a person wants to go this way, what does that person do? What kind of decisions does that person make?
Yeah. Yeah. And also just to piggyback off of that, it's not necessarily about figuring out like what they want to do in life, like their career and everything. That doesn't
No.
have to happen right away. But I think understanding and helping them understand and recognize what values they want to have, the type of person they want to be, that's really important, right? And to get a really clear
Hmm.
idea on who they are,
Hmm.
because you can use that as your compass, right, in life. When you know who you are, at least this is from my personal experience, the minute I really got to terms with who I was and I found peace in who I was, then I was able to make decisions way easier than before,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So understanding and helping them especially understand who they are, what, you know, what they care about, what values they cherish, I think that's really good to help them with that process of finding their direction.
Okay, so in the beginning, what was that you said in the beginning? Uh,
Where
the
about what?
reaction in the beginning of like, let me be who I want to be, or let me do what I want to do.
Yeah, give me my freedom. Let me live my life.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us parents put too many restrictions
Mm-hmm.
on allowing that freedom to occur.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't allow that freedom to occur, they're never going to learn
Yeah.
how to handle life when you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they learn and grow. So we need to, it's a very fine line, I think.
Yeah.
We do need to give our teens lots of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
but with some boundaries to keep them out of the gutter.
Yeah.
And then when you make those boundaries, it's not just you making the boundaries, it's you having a discussion about the boundaries so that they understand why they're there
Mm-hmm.
and they don't feel like they're being told what to do and da 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 da
Yeah.
da. Um, and then it can be a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can be a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing. You'll watch them grow even more and you can see them like freedom means wings, right? You can see them fly. Whereas when you have too many of those boundaries and restrictions, they don't get a chance to do any of that.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
Mm-hmm. And it's a I do understand though, it is a two-way street sometimes, right? Like you have to, as a parent, I can only imagine you want them to have that freedom, but at the same time, you need to trust them as well, and they need to show you that you can trust them. This
Mhm.
is making me think a lot about my own personal story because my parents, they trusted me enough to let me leave home and go live in another country across the ocean in Europe to give me the opportunity to pursue my dreams, right?
Right.
And that came with so much freedom. I mean, if I'm being honest, like I could have not gone to school and told them, yeah, I went to school. I could
Mhm.
have done literally whatever I wanted to. I could have gone out to party every night. I could have done whatever I wanted to do at any time while, while going on this journey. But they trusted me and they knew who I was and they had given me that direction and they kind of like they just knew the direction that I wanted to take.
Mhm.
And that allowed them, I think, to trust me even more when it came to just letting me be free, right?
Yeah.
They weren't on top of me all the time saying, "Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with?" They never did that
Mm-hmm.
because they just trusted me. And I also think that I made an effort to be a good person as much as I could, even at that age, at a young age, to show them, like, yes, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to take care of myself and I'm going to do my best to make the right decisions. I didn't always make the right decisions. Obviously, I'm growing up. I still am growing up,
Mm-hmm.
but that's life, right? That's growth. That's evolution. That's the way things work.
Yeah.
Um, so I understand there is a two-way street. It's like, yeah, they almost need to show you that you can trust them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, okay, how do you find that balance then, right? How do you help them develop into someone who you can trust and then be able to just say, you know what, I feel okay letting you go and giving you that freedom?
This
It's an
reminds me of
interesting one.
a story of when my oldest
Mm-hmm.
was 16, and we had a Volvo wagon, and it had like the jump seat in the back. So you could put a lot of people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And at 16, in the state of Washington anyway, you cannot drive with other people in the car other than your siblings or your family.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he had taken the car out. I can't remember if he was going to go to a friend's house or what, but he had taken the car out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happened to be driving the neighborhood to go somewhere. And all of a sudden, I see the car in the neighborhood, and all these heads are in the car. All these kids are in the car. I'm like, oh. And it was funny because then they went up to pull into the old elementary school and they didn't see me. And then I pulled up right behind them, and all of these heads went whoop. And I'm like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I got out of the car and I went up to, I'm like, hey, bud, you're not supposed to have kids in the car. It is illegal, you know? And he's like, and so we had a little discussion about why it's illegal, because it's a safety issue, because you're distracted and you're not a good driver yet, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we laughed about it, and he got the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness I caught him. But well, and so then it makes me think, that story is related to why this is so important, because I did catch him, but my other son was in an accident where he is older, he's in his 20s, and a
Mm-hmm.
16-year-old has 16-year-old comes through a traffic light
Mm-hmm.
and turns right in front of him on a green light. And
Collision.
guess what? She had five people in the car. Yeah. And totaled our car, my son's car. And she I'm sure her license was taken away, everything, because she broke the rules.
Yeah.
And the rules are there because that kind of stuff happens. That's
Mm-hmm.
why they make that rule.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's boundaries.
Yeah.
And those boundaries are for a good reason,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course kids are gonna, I did it all the time, do things that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when you have the discussion of why those boundaries are there, then they
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I have, so now you've opened up a story and I'll share this one, even though I shouldn't be sharing it because God knows what can happen. But I was also, so this is when I was 16, living in France. At the time I was living with my grandmother over there, but she was in Canada visiting family. I had
Mm,
to go back to France because I had preseason that was starting, so training for soccer. And our training was in the morning, so it was at about 11, like 10:30, 11 o'clock, local time over there, which means like 5 a.m. in Canada.
hmm
And because I didn't have any mode of transportation, I would usually take like the bus or the train and stuff. Like that's how I'd get to training, unless I had someone who could take me. So this time I was at the bus stop waiting for the bus to come, and it didn't come, and I had no way to get to training. So I went home and I looked around for the keys of the car. and I found them and I took them. And before I left, I called home and no one answered because everyone was sleeping. And then I was like, okay. I sat down for like 5 minutes and I was really contemplating like what I was about to do. I was like, hey, are you gonna do this? Like I was weighing the pros and cons. Is this important enough for me to go and do this? Keep in mind, at 16 years old, so I had my license in Canada, but in France, you can only drive at the age of 18. So
Okay.
that was the big dilemma here. I had my license, but legally I was not allowed to drive in France. So I made the decision. I was like, look, I have to go to training. I need to because if I miss one day, then I know that I'm gonna get penalized when it comes to, the club and the team and all that stuff. So I
Yeah.
could not, in my head, I couldn't afford to miss training. And I felt like I didn't have another solution. I'm sure there were other solutions, but this was the best one that I had in my head. So, anyways, take the car, get to training safely. I was nervous the whole way, like literally sweating the whole ride there. I get there, everything's fine, do my training, drive back home, everything was fine.
Hmm.
First thing I do when I get home, I call my parents and I tell them, guys, I want to let you know I took the car to training because I didn't have any way to get to training at all. But I wanted to be honest with you. I understand if you guys like are mad at me and stuff. I understand that, but I needed to tell you the truth because that's exactly what happened. And to my surprise, they appreciated the honesty so much
Mm.
that they didn't give me any slack or anything, but they let me know. They said, "Look, don't do that again."
Hmm.
Right? And I
Okay.
understood. I knew. I made that decision knowing that it wasn't the best decision. I knew that there could have been consequences. That was a big risk. I could have gotten in trouble by the law,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think it goes back to that trust thing where even though despite the fact that I did make that decision, I still like I called them right away and I was honest with them because I
Right.
knew that I didn't want to lie to them or keep that from them in any way.
Hmm.
But anyways, I just thought I'd share that. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my more crazier stories.
Oh, yeah, it's mild.
Yeah, compared to you.
Compared to me, it's mild. Yeah. But
We'll learn more about your story in next week's episode, by the
oh,
way.
oh, oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, kids are going to make decisions. They're not always going to be the best decisions, but we just want to keep them safe.
Yeah.
And yes, they're going to break the rules and all that kind of stuff. It just happens. Um, but the more you can just have a discussion, the more you can say why. Your why is really important.
Mm,
You know, to lay down something without a why, without a reason makes
yeah.
no sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you're just putting stuff on me. But if we
Yeah.
can talk about the why, the safety factor of it all. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that girl that hit my son and totaled our car, it could have been way worse.
Yeah.
Both of them were okay. All the kids were okay, but it could have been way worse. And it's all because she wanted to have her friends in the car and take them out, which I get.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm sure she learned a lesson because I'm sure her parents were not very happy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it is like I know for me looking back on it, um, it was a wrong decision in that moment, but I learned from it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I so again, you go back to the direction thing. It seems like in the moment that's a bad decision to make. But
Hmm.
looking back on it now, I mean, the perspective that I have when it comes to that decision now is more of a learning thing. It was a way for me to grow as a person as well, to learn from that mistake and from that decision.
Hmm.
So ultimately, it almost makes it in some weird, twisted way a good decision,
Right.
right? A
Oh,
decision that
yeah, it's
has
true.
served me, right? In some way. So,
And that's the
um,
thing that when we give our kids the freedom when they're younger, I've heard this one thing. It was really good. I think it was Townsend. I can't remember the first name, parenting expert. And they talked about how you have basically your kids from birth
yeah.
to, let's say, 18
Mm-hmm.
in your home, under your wing, under your guidance. When they are newly born, they're making zero decisions. Zero decisions. You're doing it all. Okay. When they become a toddler, like 2 or 3 years old, they're making 2 or 3/18ths of the decisions, and you're making the rest. Right. So when they're 16, you're making 2/18ths and they're making 16/18ths of the decisions in their life. And that's the way it should work, because if you're making all the decisions at age 5 and not letting them have any decisions, not 5/18ths, they're going to stay back to when they were a toddler, and they're just not going to know what to do. They're not going to learn anything because they have no failure to learn from.
Yeah.
And if at 16, you have a little bit in there of decisions, but they have the majority, they are going to learn to when they get to 18 and they have 100% of the decisions, because you're out, they're out. They will make much better decisions based on all that growth going through those 18 years.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that puts it in such great perspective,
It does. It does.
and really helps you as a parent to have some sort of a guide
Mm-hmm.
as to how much you should be, how
Yeah.
much the bumper's up,
Yeah.
how many
And
pins they're hitting.
yeah, and like we can talk about this specific thing in another episode, but ultimately as they get older, they make more decisions, but it also means like they take more responsibility for their actions, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't come on you anymore to take the
No.
responsibility for them. If they make a decision and it's a quote unquote stupid decision, in the sense they take the car and they crash into someone, right? And they cause like a big problem. I mean, they also have to take a huge amount of that responsibility on the chin, and because they made that decision.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
helping them understand that early on is really important too, where you say, look, I'm willing to give you that freedom for you to make your own choices. But just know that also means that you make those choices, you make those decisions, that's on you.
Mhm.
And if they understand that and they're okay with that agreement, they're okay with making those decisions and then taking the responsibility, and they've agreed to that,
Yeah.
then it's one of those things where like they agreed to it. So no matter what they do, it's on them. And then you are okay with that as well as a parent, because you know that that agreement was made early on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then another thing to add to that too is that when you think back, even in your own life as an
Hmm.
adult, and you look back and you go, those decisions that I made that were not, weren't the best, the consequences of those decisions when I was that young were smaller,
Yeah.
right? They were smaller. So let them make those mistakes. Let them do all that when they're younger, because the consequences are not dire.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were to make some of those mistakes when they're older, because they didn't know how, the consequences could be very dire.
Yeah. That's true.
So that's another thing to just keep in perspective
Hmm.
when you are making those decisions, your decisions on how much the bumper's up or down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Nice.
good stuff. Good stuff. I could go on. I have so many other stories about things, but
In
my
in the
daughter,
in
oh my
future
gosh.
episodes.
If any, so another driving thing, right? So when my daughter was 16,
Hmm.
was going to homecoming. So it was
Hmm.
October. We live in Seattle area, so it had just the first rains and the leaves on the ground. So everything, the roads are kind of getting their first oil on them and stuff. And so she was going ahead of us to go down to her friend's house, to go take pictures. And there's this windy road that goes down away from her house. And I said, well, we'll meet you there. We'll meet you there we'll be about 10 minutes behind you. And so we come down that road and I see a car flipped over. All the cars are backed up. And I'm like, is that our car? And my husband's like, oh no, that's not our car. And then as the traffic started to move, because there was the police cars and fire, everything, I looked at the wheels and I went, oh my gosh, that's our car. And I just panicked.
Oh,
As soon as we got up there, I'm like, that's my daughter, it's my daughter. But she was okay. She had gotten herself out based on stuff she learned in school, thank goodness. But she was okay. However, she was taken to the hospital and all that stuff. The officer came in and served her a ticket. I'm like, what? You lost control of the car. So when you lose control of a car, you get a ticket.
yeah.
So she got that, which is bad. But then when she was in 17, a few months later, she got a speeding ticket. And a few months later, she got another speeding ticket. And guess what happened? They took her license away. So my daughter wasn't able to drive. She got her license back, I think, when she was 18.
Mm-hmm.
But the insurance was so high
Yeah.
that I'm like, I'm not paying for that. So she couldn't drive until she was 21.
Wow.
And talk about consequences.
There we go.
And I'm just said, sorry, not me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pain in the butt. I had to drive her more than I wanted to, but she also had, and her friends were not too happy because they always had to come pick her up.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. But I mean, talk about learning a lesson. Thank God she didn't get hurt. Thank God. I mean,
Yeah.
even the police officer, the second time she speeded, looked at her record and said, you could kill someone.
My God.
You could kill someone driving this fast. It was in a neighborhood. There could be a kid out there, a little
Yeah.
kid, whatever. You could kill someone. And she just kind of went,
Yeah.
thank God it happened that she got caught, because
Yeah.
yeah, she could kill someone, then her life would be over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, she was
again,
forced to learn, right? Forced to
forced to
learn to
learn.
see things a different way and
Yeah,
understand things, right?
it was a hard lesson, but
Yeah.
it was a better lesson than if she would
Mm-hmm.
have killed someone.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's an extra on the end. So maybe this podcast kind of long, probably, but
No,
oh
it's all
well.
good though. It's been a while since we've had a long episode, so
Yeah,
yeah, well, a longer episode.
such an important
Yeah, it's a good topic. I
topic.
think we could talk about this one actually for a while, so I mean, we might do another one soon about the same topic or,
Yeah,
something related to this.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Well,
Alrighty.
thanks for sticking with us this long. That means you must have gotten value out of it. If you've stuck with this long, would you please subscribe, like, share this episode? We would really appreciate it. And if you want more tips, we'll have something on that too for parenting tips. I've got some for you. So
Mhm. Link in
anyway,
the description.
thank
Take
you.
care,
It's an honor to
everyone.
be here. We appreciate you. We hope that we're giving you lots of value. Oh, there it goes.
They say I'm a magician when it comes to technology. What can you say?
All right. See you next week.
Bye.